skeptical about astrology. I wasn't sure what was valid about it, and I truly got into it through my attempts to disprove it. And you know, you can't disprove something that you know nothing about. So to disprove it, I had to learn what it was. And step one of that was figuring out how to calculate a chart. And my thinking was, if the math is this complicated, how can it be nothing? So that intrigued me from the beginning, but I continued with my empirical look at astrology and thinking that, all right, there are certain things that are supposed to work in a particular way. And so I set up a study, queried a lot of people, anyone who was willing to give me their birth information, and in the process learned that there was such validity to this that I felt like I had stumbled through the most amazing door and discovered one of the keys to the universe.
So how has astrology impacted your life, not only personally, but also as a career?
Well, astrology is my work, but years ago, when I was looking for a tagline to my business, it became Astrology and Beyond, because I realized that I wasn't really limiting myself to one subject matter. But the beauty of astrology truly is that it is a language of life that applies to everything that we are experiencing. And this language itself is quite rich symbolically, and the way it shows us in an objective way, an objective sense, what's happening with ourselves in our lives. And I think from a personal level, this has been the tool that has offered me a wonderful objective lens to explore not only myself and my own life, but to work with other people to explore that great quest of self-knowledge and of understanding of some of the truths and mysteries that is this grand experience we call our lives. So it's had a huge impact for me.
Nice. What is your favorite, what fascinates you about astrology? What would you tell a new person just seeing like this video for the first time and going, oh wow, I need to investigate this?
Well, you know, I think the greatest fascination, well, among other things, I think the greatest fascination of astrology is how broadly you can apply it. It literally, I'll give you a good analogy. Astrology is a lot like a finely tuned lens that you bring the focus together, and with this focus you can sharpen up your capacity to see and understand yourself, your life. And it is the coolest timing tool. See, I've shown how old I am now by using the word cool. But what a timing tool. There is no other tool that I know that shows us the timing that we get from astrology. And who among us does not need to improve our timing?
Yeah. So what is your, what kind of, what techniques do you use?
Oh, I use all sorts of techniques. I've been studying astrology for a very long time, and it is a study. And now that we have computers to help us with our mathematical calculations that I alluded to in the beginning, and I like math. Don't get me wrong with that, because I'm very fascinated with math. But the tools, the astrological tools themselves, there's a broad way we can work with astrology. We've got the astrology of the individual and our life experience that we think of in a more sort of classical application. And there are a lot of ways of doing this. Some people are humanistic astrologers, others are Jungian, psychological, archetypal astrologers. I incorporate a lot of tools in understanding individuals, but I also work with the big picture. And so there is a realm of astrology called mundane astrology that is about the big picture. So yes, I use that application of astrology, and I work with progressions, directions, transits, returns, eclipses, all sorts of things. There's relationship astrology, and I work with a number of techniques in relationships, composites, synastry, all of this technological terminology that basically is picking up a number of instruments so that you are able to work with whatever the question may be. And speaking of question, I work with picking times. It's called electional astrology. Questions about the times, horary astrology. And I am quite fascinated with what a number of our brilliant translators like Rob Henn and Rob Schmidt and Ellen are doing and working with the history of astrology. So you name it, if I can study it, I use it.
The ancients did a lot of mundane astrology. Can you define mundane astrology for the casual viewer?
The word mundane astrology, we tend to think of the word mundane as meaning come see, come saw, not much to it. But the picture of mundane astrology is the astrology of what's happening in the broader sense, in the big picture around us. We can look at any given time. For example, let's say we want to understand a pattern and how it might apply to the experience of the collective. And this is mundane astrology.
Okay. How do you prepare for a session, and do you ever get nervous before a client walks in the door?
Well, it's funny. Some things make me nervous, some things don't, frequently. And so, it's not a stage fright sort of thing. I always really make an attempt to balance and sort of clear my mind and my own energy before I work with an individual. My preparation involves the calculations and these tools we've been talking about, and taking a look at the chart for a while before someone comes in. But over the years, it's been very interesting because there have been many informal opportunities to talk with people. If anyone has ever been to an astrological conference, frequently people are talking about their charts, and I've been pulled over many times with someone sketching their chart on a napkin and, take a look at this, or now everyone's carrying around their computers. Oh, look at this, what do you think about that? And so there's not always a time to really study and contemplate and think. And this idea and this question of preparing, so many of my clients I've known for decades, and the preparation is essentially the development of our professional relationship with one another and a chance to look at the many dimensions of their lives through the lens of the astrological chart.
What books have you written, and if you're a writer, what inspires you to write?
I've written a lot of books, and many of them have been for the general public. For many years, authored Llewellyn's Sun Sign book and the personal horoscopes there, and the Moon Sign book, writing the personal lunar forecasts. I have not done that for a while, but in the more, what you think of as kind of more academic astrological books for studying the subject, wrote a book called Astrology Woman to Woman that is a treatise on astrology through the experience of being female, because men and women are different, and I felt that it was important to examine these differences and what they mean in the application of interpreting the astrological chart. I've also written several books and pieces of information about dealing with your kids. The initial book, Optimum Child, was later revised as Astrology and Your Child, and now it's going through another incarnation and getting ready to be republished again in a year or so. And this book is about using astrology to guide and understand our children. I've also written pieces that are in anthologies, astrological anthologies, and have edited my own anthologies. So I've written book-wise a lot of books, I think 29 books I've had something to do with. And computer reports. I've written Computer Report Writers, which is another broadly used piece of astrological information that's tailored to the individual. And I have 4 of those that are available now and 3 more in process. So a lot of things, and magazine articles. I write a regular column for the Mountain Astrologer, and over the years, a lot of things in print, magazine, newspaper, and online.
In terms of spiritual path, astrology seems to indicate that there's some kind of infinite or intelligence or transcendent being behind why this stuff works. So, what would you say about the spiritual path and astrology, and do you have a spiritual path? How do you approach it?
Well, the integration of mind, body, and spirit is one of the key things that we're all doing here on the planet. I do think that my exploration of astrology early on has been an integral part and a key part of my own personal spiritual growth. There is quite a difference between spirituality and religious ideology, and astrology is not a belief system, and I think we need to make that perfectly clear. You don't believe in astrology. Astrology is something to know about, and that quote comes from one of my favorite teachers, Noel Till, and he says it with great bravado, as it should be said. And so I don't believe in astrology. I use astrology. My belief system is something that I consider to be a very personal and intimate aspect of my life, and I think we all feel that way. And my spirituality is certainly a powerful and significant aspect of how I am living my life. My goal has been, and is to maintain my life as my meditation.
How would you say that astrology and its sort of holistic philosophy and its, reflection through this, the dynamic of change would, what would it have to say about like cosmology and our meaning and the evolution of consciousness?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because one of the things we look at with astrology is cycles. And the idea of evolving, evolution, implies longer spans, longer periods of time. Evolution is difficult to accomplish in 15 minutes. And I think evolution of soul, for example, is quite difficult to accomplish in a few years. As a greater collective in the evolution of humankind on the planet and possibly beyond, I think astrology gives us an objective way to look at the picture of what we are experiencing in a broader way. For example, if we're experiencing a cycle, I'll name some astrological terms, like one we're in now, where Saturn is currently opposing Neptune. This is a repeating cycle that we see every so often. And during these times, we've witnessed significant historical themes that have repeated themselves over and over again. And hopefully, each time the cycle occurs, we'll have a chance to tune in to that theme that has resonated before and make choices and deal with challenges that are related to that theme, which can involve this question of what I believe and what ideally I hold and what I'm standing in front of. How do these balance one another, or how do they confront one another? Is my reality challenging my ideology? And as human beings, are we being challenged at this point in time with this cycle to clarify what we believe and why? Or are we being led by someone who's tapping this sense of what we believe and saying to us, if you believe this, then you must do these things, or suffer, or perish, or wound your mortal soul forever? Is it true? Is it not? How do we respond? That's where the evolution comes in.
We have this astrology community with all these colorful characters, including yourself, people like Michael Luton, Philip Sedgwick, Stephen Forrest, all these. What would you say your experience has been of the astrological community?
The astrological community is made up of the most talented people I've met anywhere. In fact, I would challenge any community of individuals to really be equal to what you find among astrologers. To think astrologically, you really have to allow yourself to open your mind to, first, the fact that any and everything is possible. And I believe in the talents that I see with individuals, not just in understanding astrology, but in realizing, in understanding astrology, that, I'm here to really also express myself. And I've seen hugely talented singers, dancers, writers, painters, artists of all type. I see within this community a tremendous layering of creative gifts, and anyone if you're not an astrologer and you hear of an astrological convention in your area, go for a day at least to be around this vibrant body of people. It's a wonderful, wonderful family of people.
Scientists, scholars, I mean,
Yeah,
geez.
scientists, scholars, serious thinkers who also are amazingly quirky, like all ingenious individuals.
Is there anything that I should ask you that I don't know to ask
Anything you should ask that you don't know to ask?
about your life?
These have been nice, thought-provoking questions. In regard to me, I think like every human being, I'm one of these people with many different facets, and although I see myself as an astrologer, I don't see myself as just an astrologer. I'm a questioning individual. I'm deeply and passionately involved in the politics of change, and that means that I do actually get out there and explore what, as a body politic, might make a difference in the quality of life, and don't just sit back and sit at my dinner table and complain that nothing's being done. I like to get out there and be involved in making change and asking the questions and bringing information forward beyond the world of astrology. So I'm involved in politics. I'm involved in the worlds of nutrition and better health, and I love to sing and dance and perform. And I've said, she says, covering her mouth, I've said in some of my biographical pieces, when you do anything, they ask for a biographical sketch, and frequently you're writing it yourself, which is horrible. It's a very painful experience. But frequently my last line is, when I'm not busy with my astrological practice, I'm pretending to be someone else in local theater productions. So there are those aspects of myself, and I'm a mom and a wife and a gardener and love animals. So there, a lot of dimensions to me. So hopefully some of those are fun and interesting.
Yeah. Any last inspiring things? I mean, everything.
Last inspiring things. If you are not familiar with astrology beyond some of the things you may read online or in newspaper columns, one of the great things that you can grasp from astrology is to access the knowledge of a professional astrologer, because this is going to be a conversation about you unlike any conversation you've ever had in your life. And you owe it to yourself to have that conversation, to really explore who you are. And whether you have it with an astrologer, with a therapist, with someone that can help you look and peer deeply into yourself, you might want to take advantage of the great experience of talking with an astrologer and having a dialogue about you that will lift you up and open your heart and open your life and create great opportunities for you to make the secrets of your talents and your strengths and your joys of reality.
Perfect.